Okay, I didn't have like a Pied Piper flute or anything, so you get this. I think it's a pan flute of some kind. I think I'm not 100% sure on that, but that's what I think it is. But it makes noise, vague noises. That'll come up later in the chapter. So, chapter 1141, titled "The Things I Fear." Fair enough title, given what we're going to see in this chapter. So first we have the cover story where we have Yamato has finally stepped up. He has dashed forward, and Thunder Boggarod, who's who, which is just funny. It's very similar to when Yamato first shows up in the story when he Thunder Boggarod's ulti. So we get that. We get some things that actually kind of tie back to the cover page this week, because last week we got the SBS for 1111. Sorry, for volume 111. Excuse me. And we kind of found out some interesting information about Ulti and page 1 in that. So in a previous SBS, we had gotten the reveal of Hanafuda, who was the previous warlord that Ace had defeated, and that then Kuma took over as the new warlord. And we kind of found out some information about Hanafuda from Oda in that SBS, where it's just like, oh yes, Hanafuda had like collected zoans and stuff like that, those types of devil fruits. That was kind of his hobby, was collecting them, and that given that information, I don't know if it had been specifically stated, but there had been like connections drawn between him and Kaido. So in this next one, the one that just came out, someone asked Oda, so Hanafuda seems like he would have had a connection to Kaido, and we know that Kaido was at the very least on pretty decent terms with like Ulti and Page One's father. And just is Hanafuda Ulti and Page One's dad? And Oda just was like, yeah, Hanafuda is Ulti and Page One's father, which was like, okay, that's you couldn't have mentioned that in the last SBS. But yeah, so we get that information in this past SBS, which is kind of fun, which kind of ties into the cover page. We don't see Ulti or Page One in the cover page this week, but we see who's who getting beat up. He probably has barely recovered from his fight with Jinbei, so now he's just gonna have more pain going on in him. And we also, in the cover page, we also see the sword that was Yasuie's sword, or at the very least a sword that is meant to represent Yasuie blade, that is part of Yamato's job to return the sword to Hakamai. Into the actual chapter. So we start off at the Walrus School, and what we get is all of the children are just like screaming in terror, which is completely understandable given that there is a giant effing snake that has somehow appeared within the school grounds and somehow got here. And they're just like screaming, teacher, teacher, help, and they're just all panicking and everything, which is fair. I do not blame them in the slightest in this regard. If I was, even as someone who's 32 years old, if this giant freaking snake showed up out of somewhere, I'd start screaming for help too. So I don't blame them in the slightest for this. And we just see a bunch of the kids, and it's like they're all panicking and screaming. Again, I don't blame them at all for that. And then there's there's a huge snake in the schoolyard. It's Jormungandr, I'm sure of it, the serpent of the end of the world. Which, of course, in Norse mythology, Jormungandr is, of course, the serpent that is supposed to be the one that Thor is supposed to fight during Ragnarok. And we have one of the kids, I think it's one of the kids, screams, wait, it's Saturday. And I'm like, I don't know if that is supposed to be a reference to something in Norse mythology, because I know that there's certain, because like I know Thursday is named after Thor, and like Freya is Friday and stuff like that. So there's like certain days in Norse mythology that are like in or in our days of the week now that are like named after like gods. I don't remember if Saturday has an exact reference to that or not. I don't know if that's supposed to mean that, like, oh no, wait, Ragnarok isn't supposed to happen on a Saturday or something. So I don't know exactly what that means, but that's what we got. So one of the kids is screaming about that. We see the giant snake, and it is huge, and it's like biting into the school. And we see Angie, the teacher, has like picked up maybe she has a club, or maybe she at least has like picked up a piece of wood, and she's trying to defend the kids by like trying to attack the serpent. And they're like, we're gonna get eaten. And she's like, everyone get inside the school now. And she's like ordering them to run into the school. And then we have inside of the Walrus School, the teacher's lounge, as it says. We see Angie, and we see two men. We're gonna get their names in a second. One of them is just one of the other teachers. He's like, teachers, we have an emergency. And it's just like, it's true. And Angie's like, it's true. A giant snake just appeared. A beast from the underworld. What is a creature like that doing in the sun world? So this is supposed to imply that the beasts that live down in the underworld, and where Loki is, where the mountains are and everything, that they normally are not supposed to be up in the sun realm. That it's very, very unusual. We know that back when like Loki was a kid, at one point in time, he like captured a bunch of the beasts or whatever after he tamed them, and then like he took them up and unleashed them on villages. But that was a different story. This is like Loki, as far as they're aware, is still tied up. He's not completely, and we'll see that later on in the story, in this chapter. But like Loki is at the very least, not currently trying to rampage, to their knowledge. And so we get the introduction cards. So we have the math teacher, Blade. And he's like, I hope everyone manages to escape. And then we have the Walrus School principal, Kiba. Or as my brain keeps wanting to pronounce it, Kaiba. But I know that's not right. Kiba. And he's like, we need to call the chiefs. And Angie is just like, meanwhile, the children's just like a national language teacher, librarian, Angie. So we get a little bit more of a title for her. Blade he looks like just a regular giant, but he looks like he has like the horns that are like associated with, the demon giants, the ancient giants. And then the principal Kiba, he just looks like a walrus. Like he's got like the really, really, really long teeth that are like tusks. So either maybe he has a walrus devil fruit, which, I mean, okay, that's a valid thing to exist in the One Piece world. Maybe, I don't know. We haven't had a walrus devil fruit. That'd be fine. I have no problem with this. Walrus are badass. There was one in like Europe that kept climbing onto boats and sinking them, because it's like, I just want to lounge in the sun, and then it got too heavy, and then the boat sank. Walruses are very interesting creatures. They can also be very scary. So there's a possibility he maybe has a devil fruit, maybe he's part mink, or maybe he just happens to have this type of a design because Oda was like, yeah, sure. And then if someone asks in an SBS, hey, is Principal Kiba of the Walrus School, is he like a walrus mink giant hybrid or something like that? Because like a walrus would be able to be a mink because it has fur, so that would be that as a mammal. I have not seen a walrus in real life. I've seen elephant seals, and those things can be pretty scary too if you're not careful. My mom and grandma and I saw them when we were out in California a long time ago. So we see, some of the other children are just like screaming because they're terrified. And it's just like, teacher, Agnew is going to get eaten. And Aegir is one of the students, I'm assuming. He looks like one of the boys. I think we saw him earlier interacting with the Straw Hats, with Luffy and Zoro and Usopp and Sanji when they were looking at the school. And we get badass principal, so badass old guy. We're going to get a couple of badass old guys in a second. Kiba comes running out, and he has a mallet, and the mallet also has like tusks on the back, so it's like a giant hammer with like a tusks on the back, and he's like running out and jumps and just bangs the hammer down on top of the snake, just banging it away from, attacking the students, which is good teacher, good principal, protect your child, protect the students. And then we have Saul comes running, and he was over at the library, which we know that over at the Owl Library, which we know is like right next to the school, so they would have heard like all the screaming and the commotion and everything. Between like Saul's giant ears and between like Chopper's good hearing and everything, they heard the screaming of the children. So they're like, okay, we're gonna go help the children. And Saul's like running down the branch, jumps into the air, and he's like, sorry, I'm late. Let go of the snake, Kiba. And he like hockeys up his fist. So we get Saul using hockey, which is great. We've never seen him use hockey in the story before. To be fair, we have seen a bit of his fighting prowess back on Ohara, when he was like picking up the Navy ships and like chucking them aside during the Buster Call. But like, he's a giant, so that's understandable. We've seen, just in this arc alone, we've seen Road would have had to have Road's Crow lifted or Raven or whatever lifted the Sunny. Road probably had to move the Sunny. Goldberg moved the Sunny. Do we currently know where the Sunny is, or is the Sunny just sitting in the village right now? Possibly. It might just be sitting in the western village right now. Okay, there's worse places it could be. And what ends up happening is Saul jumps up into the air, hockeys up his fist, and then he does Kimatsu Shiken is what it's called. And he jumps up into the air, hockeys up his fist, and then bam! Kind of like very similar to when like Luffy gear force Kaido's head into the ground at the beginning of Wano. And so the translation note is that Saul's attack is written with kanji that mean demonic purification, resolute fist. But, I love this here, but the reading chosen by Oda means final exam or final test, like in school. So it is literally Saul as like a librarian / scholar on Ohara after on Elbaf from reading all of the books, is like, my new attack, hockey's up fist, smashes snake, final exam. I love that. Very, very good. I love that. I think that's like the first named attack we've gotten out of Saul, because it's like, as I said, we kind of saw a bit of Saul, and like, given the fact that like he was a vice admiral, we know that he at least had like armament and observation hockey. So it's like, it's kind of cool that we're getting to see him use it here. And like, a lot of people are like, well, if the kids go under attack, Saul's there and he's going to try to protect them. And we know that Kiba was also protecting them as well, and we'll find out a little bit of information about him as well. And we just like see the snake get like bashed into the ground, and a bunch of the kids are like they're terrified. Again, I do not blame these children at all for being terrified in this situation. I would be terrified if I was in this situation. They're probably less panicked than I would be. Although I did see like a really cool video the other day of like, I think it was a teenager who was babysitting 2 kids and a dog, and like the dog started barking, and the dog was like barking at the door, and the teenager like goes over to the door. She was like 15, opens the door, sees that there's like fire or something outside the door. She's like, oh, that's not good. Closes the door, grabs the kid and the dog and the other kid that she's babysitting, and like calmly gets them all out of there safely. And I'm like, okay, I would like to hope I would be that type of a person in that situation, but I don't know. To be fair, I hope I never have to find out. I hope I never have to find out if I'm able to be that brave in this situation. But like, so we see, the kids are just like screaming some more, which is understandable. And they're like, what the? And then we get like this nice full page, or this, kind of full view of Principal Kiba. And they're like, Principal! And he's like, ow, ow, my back. Ow, ow, my sciatica. Thanks, Saul. It's like, he's a gold guy, because we find out that he is actually a former giant warrior pirate. As in, like, maybe, like, probably not in the same generation as, like, Yorl and Jarl by any means. Probably not that generation. But, like, maybe he was on the crew with Dory and Broggy, or like maybe a little bit before them. Because like you have to imagine, just from what we know about the giant warrior pirates, at least for the generations that we currently know about, we know that there was Jarl and Jarl's generation, and then there was Dory and Broggy, where they were the co-captains, and then now they have Hyrudine and his group. And Hyrudine does not currently have a co-captain. He's just the captain. But like it seems like Kiba may have been on like Dory and Broggy's crew, so maybe he's gone and seen his former captain since then, or maybe he's like the little like intermediate generation between the two of them, between like Jarl and Dory and Broggy, given the circumstances. And so we get like a good full view of him, and he's got like the shoulder pads that have like spikes on them. And I do like his hammer. It just looks like a regular hammer. It's just giant, which is fun. And Saul's like, no problem, but what the hell is that snake? And they're like, Saul Sensei, because all the kids are just so happy that like Saul has showed up, and that like Kiba showed up and helped protect them. And the kids are like, oh, the principal sensei was a warrior too, so it was true that Saul Sensei was super strong. He was part of the Marines, right? That's so cool. So it's just like all of these kids have like, they've heard rumors from like their parents, or like from the teachers talking, or from like the other people in the village of like, yeah, because like if some of these kids, okay, so we know Colin is 20 years old, meaning that he would have been born 2 years after Saul arrived on Elbath, or somewhere within that time frame, when Saul, under the under the orders / allowance of King Harald, started to found or whatever, or at the very least make more prominent the Owl Library and the Walrus School to start teaching the children. And to like store Elbath's knowledge, along with store all the books from O'Hara. So a lot of these kids might be similar in age to Colin, or a little bit younger, or even like a year or two older, or something like that. So they probably would have grown up, because like for them, Saul may have been on the island their entire life, and they're not used to seeing Saul have to do this. It's like he's got like his battle scars and stuff like that, but most of those scars and the missing leg are from the fact that we see the peg leg in the previous page. A lot of them are like, we didn't, we've heard rumors about Saul and that he was pretty strong. Same thing with like the principal, but like, wow, type of a thing. And like even like Ripley has stated that she was part of like the last generation of warriors on Elbath. And she's probably around the same age as like Hyrudine and Gerd and stuff like that. We don't have her specific age yet. Same thing, like we don't have the specific age of like Scopper yet. But so we kind of have that there. And like, so the kids are just like, oh my god, they're amazing. And we see Robin and Chopper pop out of Saul's beard, which is just like, well, that seems like a valid enough place for them to be. I mean, like, his beard's probably pretty thick and strong, and they can just like hold on to it or whatever. So I just, that works there. And they jump out of there. they're like hanging on inside. And they're like, and Robin's like, are there beasts like this in the Sun World too, Saul? So I'm assuming she maybe heard about like the beasts that were down in like the underworld realm, the underworld area that like Luffy talked about or something. Because I don't think Robin saw any of them. But maybe she like heard a bit about that. Well, she would have seen like the giant moose that Hyrudine and Stanton brought back. So maybe she saw a little bit. And Saul's like, usually there are some wild animals, but so it's implying that there are wild animals that live in the Sun Realm. It's just they're not these types of beasts that are around. And Chopper's like, it's huge. And Saul's like, I'm sorry guys, I ended up scaring you, didn't I? And all the kids are like, it's all good, thanks, wow, Saul Sensei. They're just like so happy. And then one of them's like, Wolf Sensei. And Chopper's like, what now? And we cut back into the Walrus School back inside, and we see that one of the other teachers, the PE teacher, Wolf is just his name, and he looks like he has been like beaten up. Like, I don't know if he's been like, we're gonna find out that like Gunko and the Gunko and the other God's Knights are kind of behind this. Shamrock seems to have left, but we still have like Gunko, Summers, and Curing Hammer still here. Obviously. And So he may have either been attacked by one of the other beasts that we're going to see in a minute, or he was just like beat up by Gunko and her arrows and everything. The arrows seem to be the more likely role, and he just looks like a typical Elbath warrior, but like he's the PE teacher, which I like. PE was not my favorite subject in school by any means, mostly because of the fact of I freaking hated the stupid physical standardized testing that they had to do, and that you have to do it in front of all the other students, and I effing hated the pacer. And if you don't know what the pacer is, if you're from another country and you're seeing this and you don't know what the pacer is, look it up. It's stupid. Also, why was dodgeball ever invented? Dodgeball is a ridiculous sport that basically allows bullying, and I have been hit in the head before by a dodgeball, and that's not fun. So what ends up happening is we get inside the school, and like Saul's rushed in, and like the rest of a bunch of the kids rush in, and like Chopper is, I'm assuming, gonna start looking over Wolf to see what happened, and Wolf is just like, I'm fine, but what about the kids? And they're like, what? He's like, Professor, Ilva, who's one of the other kids, is just one of the other kids. Ilva and the others just walked off without saying anything. And they're like, walked off? Where? And then Robin has like popped out of Saul's beard again, and one of the boys is just like, hey, are you guys friends of Luffy? And she's like, yeah, we are. And she's like, did Luffy do something to you? I think he like jumps back further from them because he's a little terrified of them. He's a little terrified of Robin, so he jumps back. And then Saul is like rushing off because he's gonna go try to find the kids, because like I guess someone pointed into the direction that they went. And Wolf is just like, watch out, Saul, don't touch the children. And Saul's like turns around and is like, wait, what? Like, why? And he's like, where did Ilva and the others go? And one of the other kids is like pointing and just like, that way, toward the beach. And they're like, one of the other ones is like, Professor, what's happening to them? They look like they're asleep and won't respond. And like Robin's like being able to observe this anyway, because she's, her and Chopper are like still in the beard, and she's like asleep, but weren't they just walking? And they're like, yeah, it's weird. And we get the thing of like, it's like they're asleep. They won't answer when I called them. They wouldn't answer when I called them. And we cut down to the beach, where we see that several of the kids, at least one of them which is wearing the Viking helmet. Another one has like the ancient giant horns. Another one might have the ancient giant horns, or it might just be a helmet again. And I think some of these are just some of the other various kids that we've seen that were in like Colin's class and everything. And all of them do appear to be asleep. You see like the little sleep bubbles coming out of their noses for some of them. And like they're walking, and like there is an arrow going along next to them. Now, from what we saw of Gunko's arrow ability is that wherever the arrow is pointing, that is the direction that you will go. We saw this with like the arrow bird, the aeroplane bird that Gunko made, that like, the head points in the right direction, and that's whichever way that the bird plane thing would go. When she was beating up Loki, she, was using the arrows to like form these different paths that she could then use to like smack Loki, smack Loki and kick him and stuff like that. And she could choose which arrow path she wanted to be on, but like that kind of like determined where her attack was going. So in this case, it seems to be that the kids are asleep. I'm going to assume from what we're gonna see later, I think it's something to do with Kieringham's ability, that there might be asleep, or possibly Sommer's ability, but probably Kieringham's ability, where they have been put to sleep, and then because the arrow is there, the arrow is like designed to like lead them away, and they're just like autopilot sleepwalking, following the arrow is what's going on. None of these kids are Colin. The last time we saw Colin, I believe he was down at the feast, at the big banquet party that they're having for the Straw Hats. So we see the kids walking away. and they're like, "Hey guys, come back! Where are you going?" And Kiba is like, "Sound the horn! Warn the entire country!" And Saul's like, "Warning the whole country isn't is too much, Kiba." And Kiba is like, "Saul, something strange is happening. Look at the forest." And Math goes and he blows this horn that is supposed to be like just like a warning horn, I'm assuming, or like, oh, if this horn goes off, something bad is happening at the school, or there's something bad happening in multiple places somewhere in the country. And they might have different horns for like different areas, and then like all of the giants know what each of the horns mean. I wonder if they have like a monthly test or something like that, because like here in Nebraska we have like the monthly tornado warning test where like they will have the sirens for like if there's a tornado warning, like the sirens will go off like on a Wednesday or whatever, in like the mid morning, and we'll go off, and it's supposed to be like, okay, well, we can hear them, so they're all working fine and everything. And then like also like on your TVs, if you have like cable or whatever, there's like the automatic thing that will pop up that'll be like, hey, you know weather warning is going on, or this is just like the required monthly test or something like that. Why the frick they always air it in the middle of a show, I don't know, but whatever. And so we cut and we see, Saul, Robin, Chopper. I was just like, what in the world are those? As they're like looking out, and like over the trees, we start seeing these other creatures start to appear. And then it's just like more monsters just appeared. Where did they come from? And like one of them looks like kind of like a wolf, and the other one looks like a bird of some kind. And they're just like black kind of silhouettes at this point in time, as they're like staring off at the Saul and Kiba and Robin and Chopper are like staring off at them, and Kiba's like, "How is this an overreaction? This is a real emergency." And they're like, "Principal!" And I think it's Angie shouted, and like a bunch of the other kids just start collapsing and falling asleep, and they're like, "The kids are passing out. Wait, hang in there, kids." And Saul's like, why? Like, why are they passing out? What's going on here? And they all just start, passing out. They're falling asleep. And they're like, I have no idea what's going on, guys. And Chopper is like, what's happening? Because like and like Robin's like, oh no, like this is not good. Because like Robin really loves kids. We saw that with the way that she was treating Bonnie, and pretty much anytime we see Robin around a kid, she's really good with kids, because she knows very much what it's like to have to grow up really fast. So she's very good with kids. Nami's actually really good with kids too, for the most part. We saw that with Momonosuke and Tama and Toko and stuff like that on Elbath, or on Wano. And Robin was good with Toko on Wano as well. And Chopper's like, put me down, Saul, I need to examine them. And he's like, I'm counting on you, but what the hell is going on? And they're like, first, stop the kids and get them out of here safely. And so it's like their intention is to like go after the kids, along with taking care of the kids that are currently in the building. We cut away from the school. We'll cut back to school in a little bit, but we cut away from the school down to the underworld area, and where we have Loki is now just kind of doing his villain monologue, I guess. It's like, you really thought that shackling my legs with Kyrioseki, with Sea Prism Stone, would be enough to contain my power? How naive. If you want to save Elbath, release the last shackle now. And like Loki is like stood up, and like we got like a good scale comparison to a degree at the end of the last chapter, with like how tall Loki was compared to like Luffy. And even with that, we see Luffy and Zoro and Sanji are here, but we're also seeing like Hyrudean in the same shot, and Hyrudean like barely comes up, like doesn't even make it to like Loki's waist for up to Loki's hips, for like how big Loki is compared to Hyrudean, which like it looks like you could stack like 3 Hyrudeans on top of each other, and they would not be tall enough to try to be as would not be as tall as Loki. So that's just like huge size comparison there. And coming from the younger sibling, I kind of know what it's like to be taller than your older sibling. My sister is 12 years older than I am, and about this much shorter than I am. um, so yeah, I know what it's like to be like the taller, younger sibling. And he's just like, you thought I couldn't do anything in this situation, I'll show you otherwise. And Hyrule is just like, Loki, like, please don't do this. And Luffy is just like, you. And we're seeing Sanji is just like, who the hell is this bastard? It's just like, Sanji does not know what is going on here entirely. And Loki is just like, you'd better hurry. If I hit something, it's gonna go down. The flames will spread. You do know about Elbaf's weakness, don't you? And of course, like Hyrule and the other giants that are down there, the other giant warrior pirates, they know about Elbaf's weakness, and this is the weakness that we just found out about in regards to like Elbaf is very weak when it comes to like fire and lightning, just because so much of the tree has like basically is like very brittle and fossilized, and if it catches on fire, it's really hard to put out the fire, near impossible, except for like cutting off like whatever branch the fire is on and either dropping it down into the underworld realm or dropping it into the ocean. And Loki raises Ragnar, the giant hammer, raises that up, and he's like, I will annihilate you all. And he's like, we see the like black lightning coming off of it. And Hyrule is just like, stop, Loki. And Loki just like has the hammer and bang right into the Atom tree. The Adama tree, right into the Elbaf tree. And like Zoro and Luffy are like, oh god, that's not good. And like we see like the crackling lightning and everything, and like Hyrule and the other giant warrior pirates are just like, oh, that's not good. And we cut back out to like full scale on this like double page spread, where we see the lightning has, from where Loki hit, lightning is striking from the sky and striking both in the underworld area, but also up further on like the sun realm area on like some other branches. And it is setting things on fire, because lightning generally tends to set trees on fire if it hits them and the trees are brittle enough. And so like the fire is erupting, and we cut to like the village, and they're like, was that lightning? Jarl Sama, there's a fire in the southern part of the island. And I think I heard the trumpet. Fire is dangerous. Put it out. So it's just like they heard the trumpet from the school. So it's just like, oh, okay, well, that's not good. Now part of the island is being electrocuted and on fire. That's just not a good combination given all the circumstances. To be fair, almost anything being on fire is bad. Trust me. A couple of weeks ago we had like a really bad house fire here in Lincoln, and that was just we also had one of our restaurants burned down a couple of months ago. Well, it was abandoned, but still. And so we got back to the Walrus School, which is where we're kind of going to end the chapter. We got back to the Walrus School, and they're like, Saul Sensei, principal, and it's Angie, I think that's Will's up, and she's like, those monsters, I remember them. And he's like, really, Angie Sensei? And she's like, it just happened today. And we cut back to like earlier that day, either like before Luffy and the others showed up at the Walrus School or what. By the way, yes, I like the fact that the Walrus School's principal is a walrus, basically. And so it's like her talking to the kids, and like the kids are all shouting like, Loki is going to use a hammer to destroy the world. Of course not. The one who's going to destroy the world is Nika. And we see all of the kids have started to draw out the thing that they fear the most. That, she's like, what they, has them draw what they fear. And, they're all just like, look at that. And it's just like, hey, stop it. Loki is even scarier. You're all wrong. The scariest one is Fenrir. And Angie's just like, don't climb on the tables. Trying to get them to not climb all over the desks. And like we just see all of the kids are just like shouting out the things that they fear the most, that they've been like drawing. It's just like Ghost, Droggar, I'll get to those in a minute. Storms, Needhug, Jormungandr, my mom. I don't know who said that. I don't know if Colin's here at this point in time. This probably didn't land while Colin was here. um, but still, I like that. My mom. Or one of the giant things that we're gonna see later. Someone's mom. How scary is this person's mom? And I was just like, are you all done now, kids? Is what she's like, are you all done, kids? From like all shouting out their answers. And one of the little girls, who might be Ilva, I think she's supposed to be Ilva, I'm not sure, we don't get the, yeah, she is Ilva. One of the other, we get a name for one of the other little girl giants. And she's like, teacher, if I keep thinking about these things, I'm going to have nightmares tonight. And she's like, sorry, Ilva, but just like in the essay, your personalities really show in these drawings. You express your imagination so well. And we cut back out of the memory from like, a couple of hours ago or whatever. And Angie's just like, those are the things the kids imagine when they think of fear. And Kiba is like, that's not possible. And we're going to get one more double page spread in a second. And is what we get to finish out the chapter, and it looks awesome. Not nearly as awesome as like the Gorosei being announced or anything like that, or as like the Nika, the mural and everything else like that, but still freaking awesome. And like, so what we are seeing is these are all the things that the children drew that they are terrified of, that they are scared of. And so it's like, this is the children's most feared world. And it's all of these different monster type things. We see what looks kind of like a dragon that might be like Needhog, and Needhog is like the serpent dragon that like gnaws on the roots of the world tree. There's something that looks like a mole of some kind. There's something that is clearly supposed to be a representation of Loki that's like this ancient looking giant. There's like this giant bird. There's the wolf that's supposed to be a representation of like Fenrir. There's like a ghost in the background. There's like a storm cloud that kind of like reminds you of like Hera or Zeus, when like Zeus gets mad. There's a very like demonic looking version of like Nika there as well, because like of course because of the way that the giants have like these different versions of Nika and the sun god, it makes sense that some of the kids might be afraid of it if it's the Nika version that like brings destruction. And then there's also like, there's something that looks like a woman off to the side, but I can't tell what it is well enough. Maybe it's Big Mom. Maybe they've heard about Big Mom. But then there's also like the Draugr, I think, are what they're called. They're kind of supposedly revealed as like Norse zombies is kind of a way of describing them. Norse supernatural zombies. They're corporeal undead creatures from the sages and folk tales of Nordic countries. So there's that. And we see all of them. And then we cut away a little bit of ways to where we see Sommers and Kieringham and Gunko. And Kieringham is like, phew, all set. And then he kind of seems to start falling asleep. So I don't know if that's supposed to be or he's just like he's just like exhausted type of a thing from like what he just had to do. And then Sommers is just like, you did a good job, Kieringham. And Kierinham's like, don't stop till the brats reach the ship. Do you think they'll manage to get them back by then? And Sommers is just like, love is something that hurts when it hurts. I'm like, love is something that hurts when it hurts. I'm like, what do you mean by that? It's like, okay, love can hurt, I will admit that. But what do you mean by love is something that hurts when it's hurt? As in, like, if you hurt a loved one, they'll hurt you back? I don't get what Sommers is trying to say here. And then he's like talking to Gunko, and he's like, hey, Gunko, what do you fear? And Gunko just has the one word answer of Nika. Okay, so a couple of things I wanted to point out. Way this video is chaptered is making reference to the Pied Piper of Hamelin, which is a German kind of a folk tale legend type thing that um, back in the Middle Ages there had been the earliest reference to this to a Pied Piper. Pied meant like multicolored clothing. It's like what pied meant. It wasn't like a something else. It was just like that's just what their clothing meant. It was like pied, multicolored. Who was this rat catcher who was hired by the town to lure the rats out of the town using his magic pipe. As I said, I don't have like a pipe. I have this. And what happens, in the myth, or the story, what happens is, the Pied Piper shows up. They're like, hey, can you get all of these mice out of our, get all these mice, all these rats out of our town? And he's like, sure. And he like plays his flute, and all the bright mice come, following him out of town. And then they kind of refuse to pay him. And he then is just like, okay, well, I'm going to steal your children then. And that night or whatever, he starts playing, and all of the children start following out of town just like the rats had. This one has popped up in lots of different stories, lots of different collections of stories, including, the Brothers Grimm and Robert Browning, along with many, many others. And like the phrase Pied Piper has become a metaphor very synonymous with like a person who attracts a following through charisma and false promises. Yeah, that kind of applies to politicians right now in various parts of the world, particularly in the United States. So Gunko is kind of pulling a Pied Piper in the fact that like they're having, I'm assuming it's like Kieringham that is like putting the kids to sleep somehow. That might be like associated with like his devil fruit. I don't know enough about Kierans to know if they're able to put people to sleep or something, but like he's putting them to sleep. Or possibly Somers is, I don't know. We didn't find out if it was Somers or Kieringham that did this, but they put the kids to sleep, and then Gunko is able to use her arrows to make them follow them down to the beach so they can get them into the ships, and then use the boats or whatever to get them back to Marigeois. Which, to be fair, Elbath is almost on the opposite side of the world from Marigeois, so I don't know exactly how far they intend to try to get these kids as hostages, but if they at least have them as hostages on a ship, they can then at least use them against the giants and against the Straw Hats. If they find out that the Straw Hats are there, they can at least use it against them and try to force them into joining the world government. But the other thing is, so it's like they're Pied Pipering the children out of the school. And the thing is like, so they had the children earlier in the day, Angie had the kids draw their worst fears, what they think of when they think of being afraid. And, a lot of them had, stuff that makes sense, different things from the mythology of their country that makes sense, like Fenrir and Needhog and these, zombie things and like other things like that. Along with Loki, because like a lot of them probably, are worried about Loki escaping, which is technically happening right at this exact moment, but you get the idea. And so it's like they're going through all of that, like all the kids are like drawing the things that they fear. And I remember having, issues with this as a kid. The kids get nightmares. They get scared of things. Even adults get scared of things. Night terrors are not fun. And what ends up happening is now those children's drawings of things that they fear are being brought to life. Now, whether this is just like the, Summers and Kieringham like combining their abilities, like maybe Kieringham like puts them asleep and is able to bring their dreams to life or something like that, is most likely, that seems to be implied what's going on here. That's pretty interesting. I'm kind of looking at it a little bit like in Pokemon, like you have like, you can put the Pokemon, your opponent's Pokemon or whatever to sleep, or you can have your Pokemon put to sleep, and then you have like there's Nightmare and Dream Eater and stuff like that are different types of ability or attacks that they can use in Pokemon that work the best when or only work when your opponent's Pokemon or whatever is asleep. I don't tend to use those types of moves, but I know there's certain strategies that do use them. Um, and so it's kind of like that. It's like forcing the kids' nightmares to come to life. And then because these things are technically not real, they are drawings very similar to how Conjuro's devil fruit, could bring drawings to life. It makes sense that, these things, I mean, like, they could still physically attack them. Like we saw, the one that was based off of Jormungandr was physically able to attack part of the school and cause damage, and it received damage from both Kiba hitting it with a hammer and then Saul punching it with his final exam punch. But the thing is that I don't think it looked like that snake disappeared at all. It's not represented here in like this group here, but I can't tell if it looked like it vanished. It may have. It looks like maybe it did end up vanishing at one point in time. Like with Conjuro's drawings, if you gave it enough damage, it would fall apart. So I'm assuming, I'm trying to look back at it, and it doesn't. So we see after Saul punches the thing, we see it on, on like the balcony porch area, and then we cut away, and like they talk to the kids for a little bit, and then we see that like Wolf got attacked, and then we look back, and they're looking out over the same balcony where they see the other kids running away or walking away that are sleepwalking, and then they start seeing the other monsters show up, and we see the porch again, and the snake seems gone. The Jormungandr thing seems like it has gone. So I don't know if that's supposed to mean that like they were able to put in enough damage on it that it was able to fall apart, collapse in on itself, which would make sense. As I said, like Conjuro's drawings could take certain amounts of damage. Kanzenbo kind of being the outlier there, and the fact that it was just designed to like destroy, and burn and burn and burn. But like Conjuro's things would still come to life. And then if it got too much damaged or completed its task, it would fall. It would like just disintegrate or whatever, turn back into ink and vanish. Like we saw with like the Conjuro that got its head sliced off by Kinemon, that was like the fake Conjuro that was on the boat with them, and other ones of his drawings like too much damage and they fall apart, like the fake Odin and stuff like that. So that seems to be something similar that's going on here, but these things might be a bit more durable, considering that if Kiringham really has like the Kirin devil fruit or whatever they want to call it, the deer fruit model Kirin or whatever. And if they do that, then it could be that like because it's a mythical zone, has this ability to bring these things to life. It's like, oh, the kids are asleep, so now their ones are going to show up, and more of the kids fell asleep, so that means more of these monsters can now show up and can cause problems here, because it's like, well, the teachers can't just leave the monsters, because the monsters would attack the school and attack the children. So they have to take care of the monsters, but they also need to go after the children that are currently running away. Yes, they have Robin here and Chopper, and they can help with the fighting, most definitely, but these things are really big. Not that Chopper and Robin haven't dealt with, like, big opponents in the past. Chopper did fight Queen, but Queen is nowhere near the size of these things. Same thing with, like, Robin fighting Black Maria. Again, she's not really anywhere near the size of these things. And as awesome as like Fleur Demonio might be fighting one of these things, fighting like the giant wolf, I don't know the maximum for how big Robin can make her things, because these things, the angle that we're seeing them at, the size difference is quite large compared to the other the giants that we're seeing as well. And everything with like these things are towering above the trees, and just huge monsters. So again, it's like they have to deal with this. But on top of that, right now, Loki just smashed his hammer into the tree and now has set at least some villages on fire because of the lightning. And now they have to go and get rid of those villages, try to put out the fire as quickly as possible, or at least evacuate everybody and then slice the branch off to get the branch so the rest of the tree doesn't burn like what we saw with Ripley. Now we also don't know. We didn't see anything like Usopp and Jinbei and the others are like they're still down in the village, so like they'll hear about what's going on, hopefully sober up pretty quickly, and then go and try to help with like fighting them. And having Jinbei around to try to help fight the fires would be quite useful because if they give him water or something, he can use it to like use his fishman karate and jujutsu, merman jujutsu or whatever to get rid of spread the water and try to get rid of the fire. Also, Nami with Zeus could, of course, try to make it rain. Use her weather abilities to make it rain to help try to, at the very least, douse the fire enough that they can maybe try to, slow it down. Would be good ways of doing that. See if Usopp has any of his pop greens that might be useful in this situation, or have Brook like freeze parts of it, because I think we've seen Brook freeze fire before. And see him like do something like that and freeze that stuff as well. Those would be like good things that they could do to try to help like fight the fire. And like Luffy and the others are like now, Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji are, the original monster trio, along with, the new Giant Warrior Pirates are down there by where Loki is. And we'll find out what's going on. So far, Loki is living up to his probably going to be an antagonist, but we'll see what happens. And then we get to like the last lines of this chapter where it is Summers asking Gunko what she fears. And she says Nika. Which means that she, and probably Summers and Curingham, and probably the rest of the Gods Knights, at the very least, know who Nika is. Or at least have some concept of who Nika is. They may not know that there is a devil fruit based on Nika and that Luffy has it. At this point in time, I'm sure Garling probably does, and maybe he told Shamrock, but Shamrock may not have told the other Gods Knights yet. Maybe they're like, we're going to keep that on the hush-hush at the moment, so we'll see what happens with that. But like they, so we have this moment here, and it could just be that they know who Nika is. The Celestial Dragons might know who Nika is, just from like hearing the slaves talk about it, but they don't really care, or some care and some don't. And again, we don't know a lot about Gunko's backstory, and if Nika is tied into like the Will of D and the D clan and everything else like that we assume that it is for like a connection via Joy Boy, and maybe if she's aware of some of the myths of like Nika being like an enemy of the Celestial Dragons or something like that, then it would make sense that because she views the Celestial Dragons as like the highest order and everything else like that, like it is a complete honor to be a Celestial Dragon. And again, we don't know about Gunko, if she is a actual Celestial Dragon, or if she was like someone who was like promoted to allowed to be a God's Knight and have that that status as a Celestial Dragon, like what they were going to do with Loki and everything. We don't know yet. But so it'll be very interesting to see how they adjust that, how they show that in this. But yeah, she's terrified of Nika. She's scared of Nika. So Luffy showing up would be something that she would be scared of, I would assume, once he turns into that form, which would then reveal to at least these three God's Knights that, okay, well, that's not good for us. That's definitely not going to help our situation here at all if he's really Nika and has that ability, plus if Bonnie turns into it. Also, so Saul, Robin, and Chopper had been over at the Owl Library. They were reading like the Harley text and stuff like that, and Robin may have gone to like look at some other books or something like that. And I think they said that or in a previous chapter, I think they said that Lilith and Bonnie, since they're like applying, I guess, for like their resident visas or whatever for being on Elbath, that maybe they're currently in the library as well, and maybe Lilith is going to show up and see if she can like figure out what's going on here and maybe help, and like have Bonnie show up and turn into like her Nika form, and then they're like, what the heck? And she shows up and starts punching the monsters to protect the kids and stuff like that. So that's a possibility. Also, Ripley and Frankie probably heard the horn go off, and Ripley's probably going to be like her teacher mother mode is gonna like kick into high gear. Plus, we know that Frankie likes kids too, because he really liked being around the kids on Punk Hazard and stuff. And Frankie and Ripley would be like, "Oh, we gotta get back." Grabs Frankie and is just like rushing back to the village, to the Walrus School, and like shows up like in the next chapter or something. Shows up and like has like her weapon. I don't remember if we saw if Ripley had a weapon on her or not, but she was a warrior, still is a warrior. She's just also a biology teacher. You could be both. You could be a badass warrior biology teacher. The two are not mutually exclusive. Or you could be a badass art teacher and still fight whatever. That's perfectly understandable. Those two are not mutually exclusive. You don't have to have one or the other. You can be both. And what ends up, what could happen is like Ripley will show up with like whatever her weapon of choice was, and just like shows up and bashes down or slices through one of these things to like protect the kids that are part of her responsibility. And like Frankie would, again, he would jump in and like start fighting against whatever one of these things is, to try to take it out to protect the kids, and like get like a quick update from Robin and Chopper and just be like, okay, fighting those things, got it. Not that he wouldn't be able to figure that out. And then we'll see what happens. Like, yeah, we've got them all divided up in the moment. We have like Robin and Chopper up here with Saul. Bonnie and Lilith might show up. Frankie and Ripley might show back up again here, depending on where they're closest to. Ripley would definitely go to try to protect the kids. And then I wonder if Frankie has anything that's like fire extinguisher type foam or anything like that. That would be helpful. That would be a a Frankie thing to have. Would be like something that would be like the fire extinguisher stuff. I don't remember what it's called, but like the fire extinguisher liquid foam stuff that you could use. I wonder if Frankie has any of that. Where he could, bring some of that out, or like maybe they have some on the Sunny, and the Sunny might currently just be sitting in the village right now, and like Nami's like, okay, we have fire extinguisher stuff on the ship. We're gonna go and grab it because we had it for various reasons or whatever, just in case something happened. Frankie made sure we had it because safety third. Goes and like they start bringing out all this stuff, and like they start like loose. Nami's like, throw those barrels over there. Jinbei throws them, and like Usopp hits them with like one of his star green star pop greens or whatever, and like blows up the barrel, and like it causes it to react and like turn into the fire suppressant foam and stuff like that to like try to put out the fire. That's a possibility. But like have all of them they're working in the village, and then Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji are down currently by Loki, and we'll see what ends up happening here. Luffy might go Sun God, and we might see what happens with that. I don't know. So, plus, of course, we obviously want to save the children, so we'll see what happens there. So, that's what we have. I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye!